So on to our topic today, which is gastrointestinal health. So with gastrointestinal health, this is how I describe the GI tract. And I try not to think about things too terribly hard because I'm honestly always overthinking things, which is anti the rule of nature, so I tell myself. Nature's all about simplicity. Nature's all about energy conservation. The more energy I conserve, the less steps I take, the more evolutionary benefit I oftentimes have. So I try to apply that to my thought process, and some days are better than others, but the rule stays the same. So let's get to the gastrointestinal tract. Okay, so what goes on? Well, I've got my epithelium, and the epithelium is the lining that's on top. And so my nose and my back of my throat is connected to my esophagus, which is the tube that leads to my stomach, which goes to my small intestine, which goes to my large intestine, okay? Now the other thing I have is my liver, and my liver is like a manta ray. It's like a sea ray, I think of, that's right underneath our breathing, our diaphragm, or the bottom of our chest, and my gallbladder's over here underneath the right side, and my appendix is down towards the right side. So, and my pancreas is kind of in the middle here and kind of towards my back as well. So when I think about the liver is a detoxifying agent. It just pulls goo out and sends it down the chute. It stores some stuff in the gallbladder, and then the pancreas kind of enters in, and then it drains into my intestinal tract. So if you're from Kansas and you live in Kansas City or any highway system, I think of how all that stuff intersects as a really big highway triangle, or like the Grandview Triangle actually. So everything's like dumping in. Well, if you get a traffic jam at this big interchange, you get a lot of backflow, which causes pain. And that's what like gallbladder disease is. It's kind of like how I think about pancreatitis. You're getting an obstruction and backflow. And the enzymes that your body's trying to push out are trying to digest the food that you're eating. So the last thing a person wants is a backflow of digestive enzymes that's supposed to eat up food to back up and try to eat them up. And that's what hurts really bad. Okay, so it's a pretty simple way of thinking about it. Now, when I think about my esophagus, I'm chewing up my food, and it goes down my esophagus and it goes to my stomach, and that's phase one. My stomach is like a blender. It just kind of churns the food down. It's got stomach acid in it. It's the initial breakdown process, and then it's going to my small intestine, which is phase two. In my small intestine, I usually don't have any gut bacteria in there. All my gut bacteria are actually in my large intestine. So your probiotics do not work in your stomach. They don't work in your small intestine. They work in your large intestine, okay? And so when you think about that too, you're like, oh, well, there's a lot that happens before I get to my large intestine. Yes. So if you take a probiotic and you're still in discomfort, you're like, there's a lot of reasons potentially why that might be. All right. So in that small intestine again, which is phase two, you've got that dumping of your liver, of your pancreas in that area. So your small intestine absorbs some, but it further digests. And then down here on your right side, your small intestine, which is like all these feet of little big wormy looking stuff in your stomach, goes to starts your large intestine. And I think of your large intestine as this huge colony of all these gut flora that are hanging out. And then your large intestine is kind of like a game board of your abdominal cavity. It goes up, over, down, around, and out where you poop. So it's kind of like Monopoly. You think of the outside, okay? Now your intestinal tract is like a big worm, and have you ever seen on the Animal Channel that when snakes eat big mice, they get real big and then it moves through? So that's the exact same thing what your stomach is doing. It's peristalsing, like going like this. And that is why when you have gas or when you poop really bad, it hurts and then it relieves, and then it hurts and it relieves, because that is how your GI tract moves forward and how it relieves pain, okay? So in your large intestine, it further digests, it also absorbs, pulls water out, and then you eventually poop, okay? So you got phase one, you've got phase two, and then you've got phase three. And then contributing factors to all of that are your pancreas, your liver, and your gallbladder. All right, so let's talk about phase one. Phase one is your stomach. Let's talk about heartburn, for example. What is heartburn? So if I assume my body loves me, which I always assume, and my body just is trying to talk to me, why would my body give me heartburn? Why would it do that? Because it's a message, it's a voice. And if my body is talking to me and it secretes too much stomach acid, then sometimes it shoots up in my esophagus and it makes my esophagus mad. My esophagus gets mad because it says I should not see stomach acid. So the lining of the esophagus changes. And that for some people is called Barrett's esophagus. So if I go in to the gastroenterologist and I'm having heartburn, a lot of times I might get what's called an EGD or a scope. They look down my throat into my stomach and say, what do I see? And if they see those changes in your esophagus, a lot of times they give you a proton pump inhibitor or whatever they think is appropriate for you. They also might test you for like celiac disease or for H. pylori, or just look for anything else going on. All right? I totally get that. But as a fellow human being and a person that feels like her body loves her, why the heck would my body give me increased stomach acid? I mean, does it just lamely want to do that? Or is it trying to talk to me? So if I simply take a proton pump inhibitor, but I don't delve deeper and find why my body is talking to me, I will never get off my proton pump inhibitor, because every time I stop taking my proton pump inhibitor, my body will talk to me again, okay? And even if I'm taking my proton pump inhibitor and I'm ingesting a food that my body doesn't like, I still feel like crud, because my body is not just about my stomach, it's not just about phase 1, it's about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, absorption of my whole body. So I'm a big advocate in food allergies and food sensitivities. Why? Because it's a way to understand one basic principle, that if I'm eating a food that my body doesn't like, sometimes it simply increases my stomach acid and gives me heartburn to say, please don't put that in me. You know what? That's easy. If you just eliminate the food that your body doesn't want you to eat, sometimes your heartburn goes away, your bloating goes away, and the frequent stools go away. Now, over my career of checking people's food allergies and food sensitivities, there was one particular individual that came in and had said that the specific allergen he did not react to. And I thought, well, all right, because I believe everybody that tells me the truth of what it's like to be in their body. And he was the one exception to this rule that I've ever found. But lo and behold, this week his lovely wife came in and said, oh no, he poops like 4 times a day and he does not feel good and feels sick a lot. I'm like, whoa, tell him not to eat this and that and that, and I think it'll all go away. So I'm so excited to hear from them how they feel. But I'm so excited too that the theory still is sound. Oh, I'm so excited. Not that he felt bad, but that he could actually feel better. So message number 1 in your stomach is, if you have a lot of heartburn and you're under a lot of stress, that could simply cause a lot of heartburn. But food allergies and food sensitivities, I feel, really do matter, because I've been doing this for a long time, and I'll help people understand what foods they're eating. They stop eating them and they feel better, okay? So also it brings me up, what is a supplement that we have for phase 1 or your stomach? That is digestive enzymes. What the heck are those? So the other thing you have to realize is, if you swallow in your stomach, phase 1, and your stomach is a blender, and you take away all the stomach acid, your food's going to be different when it gets to phase 2. Sometimes when it gets to phase 2 is like, what the heck is this? I've never seen a banana like a big banana. I've always seen a chewed up banana. Like, this is weird. And so it causes your body not to absorb the same nutrients. It can cause a little bit more stress on other areas of your body. So we as animals were not built to not have stomach acid. Cows have stomach acid. Every other animal has stomach acid. So what digestive enzymes do is they further help your body digest the food that you're eating. Okay, so if your blender isn't working so hot and you got to break down the big banana into a little banana, you take a little digestive enzyme and it's not so bad. Another example I'll give people is if they poop out lettuce. I'll ask people that all the time. Like, do you poop out lettuce the way you chewed it in? You'll be surprised how many people tell me, yes, I do. And I'm like, whoa. So we'll food allergy, food sensitivity test them and see if they're even allergic to that. But if they're not, they can take some digestive enzymes, and guess what? They don't poop lettuce anymore. And you know what? That makes a person happy. It makes a person happy because they don't have all this pain, and they're not having this volatile diarrhea. Life is hard, poop is easy. So that being said, that's the first kind of supplement that comes to mind, digestive enzymes. So then let's move on to phase 2. Phase 2 is your small intestine. So your small intestine, your large intestine, your stomach, and actually your esophagus and your airway are all connected. Because if people have heartburn, they can also have asthma, increase of asthma, because when you're sleeping, it crawls up, and then all of that epithelium is connected, and if your esophagus is irritated, then your airway gets irritated, and if you have asthma and it gets more irritated, you can't breathe, and that's not cool. So just know that literally by helping understand food allergens, sometimes your sinuses get better and sometimes your asthma can get a lot better because of this indirect relationship. And I'll have a lot of patients that actually ingest food allergens and then they stop and they are like really stuffy. And one of the things they actually note after they stop the food allergen is that their breathing gets better and their nose opens up. That's so fun because breathing is good. It's like ABC. But when I'm thinking about supplements for the small intestine, a couple of things come to mind. So one thing is a lot of times after people have had cholecystectomy where their gallbladder is removed, they poop a lot. Okay, they poop a lot because their digestive enzymes are off. So sometimes adding digestive enzymes for those folks really helps them. The other thing, like medicinally, sometimes you can give them is cholestyramine, and those are bile acids in a medicinal form, and it kind of helps poop too. So just know that if you're pooping lots after a cholecystectomy or a gallbladder's been removed, there's some extra things you can do about it. You don't have to feel like you have to be in the bathroom all the time. Just be aware. And so then we get to the large intestine, okay? So the large intestine is actually where your probiotics work. And so now it's interesting. It's just a big colony of people, a diverse colonization our large intestine is, that you might have some yeast and you have different types of gut flora. But to me, I try not to overthink that, because if I start at your large intestine and I know that you've got other issues upstream in your small intestine and your stomach, I'm never going to help what's downstream until I really help what's upstream. The other thing I like to point out to people is when I get stressed, I eat different, I drink different, I move different. What I put in my mouth is different. So if I am stressed out and I solely focus on your gastrointestinal health, it's really hard, because the problem is not your gut flora, the problem is not your intestinal tract, the problem is what's going on in our life. So you have to help people with what's going on with their life. At the same time, you're trying to help them with their gastrointestinal health, because if you don't, you're never going to get headway, because you're always fighting against yourself, and it's freaking exhausting. And why do we need to be that way? Probiotics are amazing, right? They're going to help, but you got to think about this big picture. You got to think about phase 1. You got to think about phase 2. You have to think about phase 3, and you have to divide it up into what's most important to that person. Now, every time you take a step towards doing something a little better for yourself, you will start to feel a little bit better. And so you don't have to be perfect about this. You just have to be pretty good. So if I'm thinking about supplements that I love for gastrointestinal health, not only do I think about probiotics, I always think about things like berberine. I think about things like GlutaShield. I think about things like Inflammacor, because those are powdery substances, and small SBI Protect. I think about IgG Protect. I think about all these different things, because really your gastrointestinal tract, again, is just an epithelium. It's a lining. And 80% of your fighter infection cells are in your GI tract, just waiting to react and protect you. Well, if my gut is like all separated out, I kind of think of it like a skyscraper with lots of floors, and it's all stuck together. But if my skyscraper is like falling apart, kind of like if you built Legos all the way up, and then you split the Legos apart and they all fan out, then look at all the goo that gets in between all the layers. So my body's defenses, where it's like I'm supposed to hold on all the goo, but now I'm like open, everything's coming in. Ugh. It gets in your body, it makes your brain feel bad, your joints hurt, your whole body feels cruddy. All you gotta do is you just gotta glue the Legos back together and put the roof back on, and then you feel better. So these supplements are built to glue the Legos back together and put the roof back on, so that your body's defenses are better. It's kind of like on the inside what you would think on the outside. So if my skin has road rash and I jump in the lake, it's going to get gross, right? Because my defenses are down and my body can't push out things, but it's designed to push out things. It's just not enabled to do that. But yet if I take out the offending agents and I put in things to help my gut heal, then my body's super resilient and it can handle a lot of crud before it actually breaks down. Sometimes it just needs a little help. Hopefully that made sense. The other thing I would like to talk about just ever so briefly is intermittent fasting. So to me, this is my description of intermittent fasting, although you may read about a bazillion different definitions. So I just, again, try to make it simple. Don't overthink it. The minute I overthink it is the minute I'm going the wrong path. Okay, so when you think about intermittent fasting, think about like how many of you have bitten your mouth, or, and then what happens, it hurts really bad. But you go to sleep and you wake up and it's so much better. That is because your body wants to heal so much, and your gut is one of the most rapidly dividing cells of your body, which means it loves to heal, and it's really good at doing that. And if you just give it a break, a lot of times it can heal itself. So the longer and longer I've done this, I realized that I got supplements, I got hormones, I got medications, I've got things, but it's less and less about all the other stuff, and it's more and more about you. If you give your body time and you give it the ingredients, it loves to heal. Once it heals, it's usually pretty good at keeping itself healthy. It's been evolving a long time to do that. So I actually try to I'll prescribe medicines and supplements, but over time, my ultimate goal is to have people need less of it, because that means they just need more of themselves and understand how we did it, and they just know tools if they go back to not feeling themselves. So if you stop eating for 12 or 14 hours in a day, you're giving your amazing body an opportunity to heal itself without pummeling it with stuff that it's having a hard time making its way through. So I do think that intermittent fasting can be great for lots of people, but if people do it and it makes it feel crummy, then your body knows better than anything else. And so if you don't like the way it makes you feel, then maybe it's just not for you. But the theory about how fast your gut heals is pretty true to every individual. So if I was going to give some pearls about gastrointestinal health, that is what I would say. And again this week, or again as we move forward, don't forget to tune in for the crazy Friday mornings as I'm driving in the dark by myself in my car with a penis in a box. And I'm just going to talk about sexual health and things that come to mind, because my mind goes all over the place. But when I'm by myself, it's really, my brain, I could entertain myself in a closet. I could just sit there and talk to myself probably all day long. So hopefully the things I say will resonate with somebody at some point in time, and it's geared to being fun and not having any shame about it. And I also want to plug those detoxes, because I do feel like they make a difference, and they have made me feel better, and I hope they help you feel better. And do you have any questions? Okay, a few questions. Okay, what are they?
What are the differences, or what do you recommend, like if someone were to take Beano, or because they start to feel distress, or Pepto-Bismol, what are those used for? When do you recommend them? Are you masking what the body's telling you?
So sometimes if I've eaten, maybe I have like a little food poisoning, or maybe I just am a little sick with the flu. So if I need to take some Pepto-Bismol to help myself not throw up and to feel better, I'm all about it. Because once the process is started, we just want relief from our pain. But if I'm having to take Pepto-Bismol every night, or if I'm having to take like a lot of Tums every day, or if I'm having to take my omeprazole all the time, your body keeps talking to you. So it will either talk to you and stop talking to you, and that was a transient process which it healed itself. But if it's always talking to you, we're not fixing what it wants us to hear, and we just need to hear what it's saying. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm cool with us taking those things all the time. I'm cool with taking those things. But if you have to take them all the time, there's a message to be heard.
How do you know if intermittent fasting is for you? For example, someone asked, they had a blood test in the morning and they were fasting about 8 hours or so.
Yeah.
But then they got an alert that their blood sugar was really, really low.
So blood sugar actually shouldn't really be changed by gut flora, or like gut health, I would say. And so what happens is if you're hypoglycemic when you've been fasting, you have insulin fluctuations all day long. And that's part of a bigger process that really doesn't have to do directly, I look at with, people could argue this a million different ways, but I would say you have insulin resistance that we need to correct. And maybe intermittent fasting may be helpful for you, maybe it wouldn't. I would have to sit down and talk with that person, but intermittent fasting is not going to cure, to me, insulin resistance or hypoglycemia in the morning. That's part of a bigger process that needs addressed. Hopefully that made sense. Okay, which is a whole nother discussion. I talk about insulin resistance and go blah, 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 but that is, there's the majority of people in the United States are insulin resistant, actually, and it's a place that we could really help out. But anyway, okay. Is that it? Oh, yay! Well, I hope this was informative for you. If you have any questions, let us know, and enjoy our website too. We've kind of remodeled it a little bit, so hopefully it's even more user-friendly, entertaining, and full of connection points.